Year 3, hope you are all okay. So today sees the last lesson as part of our topic on rocks and soils. So last week we looked at how soils are formed and the different processes that it goes through, and hopefully you managed to put together a little storyboard telling us the story of how Roger Rock became Simon Soil. So today what we're going to have a look at is we're going to think about the different types of soil that there actually are. So just as we have different types of rock, we also have different types of soil. And if you thought about how we get soil and how that is formed as part of your storyboard story last week, you might have a little bit of an idea as to why we get different types of soil, just as we get different types of rock. So what we're going to start off with is a little bit of a recap to begin with on our work on rocks, because we say last week we were concentrating on soil. So just interested to see how much we can remember from our work on rocks. So we're going to do a little quiz to begin with, just to see how much is stored up there in your heads now about rocks. Okay, so I'm going to share this PowerPoint together, and we'll have a little think at this quiz and see how we get on with it. Okay. So we are going to be investigating soil permeability today. Now, we used that word permeability when we were thinking about our work on rocks as well. So hopefully you've got an idea about the sorts of things that we're going to be looking at with soil today. Okay, so there's our aims for our lesson today and our success criteria. I'm not going to go through all of those together with you because the PowerPoint's in the shared area, and we're going to talk through it as we go through. Okay, so look, here's our rocks quiz that we're going to do. So the first question says, how many different types of rock are there? So how many different types of rock are there? So we looked at different types of rock and how they are formed in their different ways. So we've got a choice there of 4, 3 or 5. Now, how many rocks can you remember that we looked at? I hope you're calling out the correct answer at me now. Let's see and reveal the answer. It is 3. There are 3 different types of rock. I'm not going to say just what they are yet, because hopefully we'll come on to those questions in a moment, okay, and you can remember. So, which of the following is not a type of rock? So we've just said there are 3 types of rock. We remembered. Which of these following is not a type of rock? So we've got chalk, igneous and metamorphic. So which one is not a type of rock? Let's have a look and see if you've got the right answer. It is chalk. So we've got igneous and metamorphic are 2 of our types, and hopefully you can remember the 3rd type that we looked at is sedimentary. Okay, so chalk is a rock, but it's not a type of rock with the igneous and the metamorphic. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. What is the name of the rock that is formed from lava or magma? So remember, we talked about the fact that certain type of rock is formed from the magma, which is within inside a volcano, or the lava that comes out of the volcano. So which is the type of rock that is formed from lava or magma? Is it metamorphic, igneous or sedimentary? Can we remember? Let's see what the answer is. Of course, it's igneous, isn't it? Igneous is our type of rock that is formed from lava or magma. So which type of rock is created on the seabed? So which type of rock is it? If you remember, we looked at how this type of rock is formed over many, many years with layers and layers that form on top and compact and crush down. Which type of rock was that? I hope you're calling out the right answer here. It is sedimentary rock. Well done if you got that one right as well. So what type of rock is granite? So granite, what type of rock? Is it a metamorphic rock? Is it igneous or is it sedimentary? Now, I know some of you did your rock posters on granite. So you've probably got a bit of a head start and a bit of an advantage if you didn't do granite as your focus. But remember when we looked at it, right, it's igneous. It's an igneous type of rock. Well done if you got that one right. Okay, so a bit of a wordy one, this one. Let's read this carefully. So which of the following statements is true? Metamorphic rock is formed from sedimentary rock. Metamorphic rock is formed from igneous rock. Or metamorphic rock can be formed from both igneous and sedimentary rock. So is it formed from sedimentary? Is it formed from igneous? Or is it formed from both types of rock? There we go. It can be formed from both types of rock. I suppose really A and B are true, aren't they? But it's not a very clear answer if we chose those. We need to make sure it's clear that it's both igneous and sedimentary, that metamorphic rock is formed from. Remember, we talked about the changes that those sedimentary and igneous rocks can go under, whether it's a great deal of pressure pushing down on it or whether it's a heat, but there's some kind of change that happens to the igneous and sedimentary rock to change it into a metamorphic rock. Okay, well done if you remembered all of those different answers there. Okay, it's quite a lot. So permeability, I said at the start, some of you, as you saw, that was the title of this PowerPoint today. Some of you might remember that word permeability from works that we did on rock before. And that's what we're going to be looking at with our soils today. So what does it tell us, permeability? Does it tell us how hard wearing the rock is? Does it tell us how easily the rock splits? Or does it tell us whether water can pass through the rock? What does it tell us? Which one of those? Which one are we going to be thinking about today? Yes, it's whether water can pass through it or not. That's what we mean by that word permeability. All right, it's how easily the water is able to pass through the rock. So there's our little quiz just to remind us and sort of set us up for what we're going to be looking at today as well, really. So what part do rocks play in forming soil? It's a little question for you to think about. And how many types of soil do you think there are and why? Well, the first part we looked at last week, didn't we? Because we looked at the fact that when soil is being created and formed, part of that process is the little bits of rock that have been eroded away and worn down and then mixed with those other things that we talked about last week. So rotting plants, fungi, the air, the water, all mixed together to create the soil. So the rocks play quite an important part in the forming of the soil. So with that in mind, how many types of soil do you think there are and why? Well, let's have a look. So here's the correct answer. There are hundreds of different types of soil. However, there are 6 main types of soil that we're going to focus on and be thinking about in this lesson. All right, so there are lots and lots of different ones, but 6 main ones that we're going to concentrate on. So why do you think there are hundreds of different types of soil? And why might soil contain some types of rocks more than others? So what are we thinking about that? Why do you think there are hundreds of different types of soil? Well, remember, part of the process is the different types of rock being eroded down. So dependent upon what rock is in a certain location and how much that is worn down will determine really what type of soil we're going to get. So that's a really important part on why we get hundreds of different types of soil. Okay, so let's carry on and let's have a little look about the different types, the 6 main different types that we are going to be possibly thinking about today as we go on. Okay, so it says let's match the soils and the rocks that are formed. So we've got clay soil. Now the clue is really in the name of this soil, isn't it? So clay soil is going to be made up largely of clay that has been eroded away, mixed with all those different ingredients that we talked about last week to form the clay soil. Got sandy soil. What sort of rock we think that might have come from? Sandy soil, again, it's a bit of a clue in the name, sandstone. So sandy soil is made up of sandstone that's been eroded away, broken down and mixed with all those different ingredients to create sandy soil. Chalky soil. Hope you're catching on to this now. Of course, comes from chalk. Okay, we've talked about chalk cliff faces. So those parts of the rock have been eroded away and mixed to create chalky soil. We can also get peaty soil. Now, we haven't really talked much about this type of rock, but that comes from peat, so peaty soil. And loamy soil, which is a mixture of clay, sandstone and siltstone. So it's a combination of all those different types of rock there, creates this loamy soil. So there's our different types of soil. We are going to watch a little video now, which just sort of gets us to think about those different types of soil and what a difference they can make to how we use them, okay? So let me just come out of the PowerPoint for a moment, and I'm going to share the video with you that we are going to be looking at together. So we've got 2 videos to do today, so we're going to do this one first of all. Now, let me just come out of that for a moment. I'm going to just check that the sound is going to be okay for us. Okay, so
soil is a mixture of broken down rocks and decayed leaf litter, all mixed together by worms and bugs over thousands of years. Let's see what kind of soil we have here. This is a soil auger. It's for going down into the soil and bringing up a soil sample. There are 2 different layers. There's a darker layer at the top. That's where the organic matter, the decayed leaves, is all being mixed in. But underneath, we've got a paler, sandy area. It looks like it's got a sandy texture. I'm going to add a bit of water to this sandy soil to try and make a soil ball. It doesn't make a very good ball. If I squeeze the ball, it collapses, and it doesn't form a worm properly. It's a very dry sand. We can contrast that to this clay soil. If we roll that into a worm, we can even bend it into a circle without it cracking.
okay, so I'll just come out of that for a moment. So we could see those different types. We had like a clay soil there and a sandy soil, and we could see the different ways in which they reacted to when that water was added. And that makes a difference to how we actually use the soil and what it means that that soil is good for, because some soils are particularly good for maybe growing things in. Some soils might be particularly good for doing different activities. So if you've got a playing field or a football pitch, okay, we always hear about waterlogged football pitches, don't we? So we need to be thinking about the soil that's there when we're choosing what we're possibly going to be using that area for, okay? So I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint now and carry on with a little bit more of that, because that is going to explain to us and get us to focus on now this idea of soil permeability and just get us to think about that a little bit more. So let's go from where we were before at this point. So Just like rocks, soils differ in terms of how permeable they are. So why does that matter? This is what we were just talking about. We grow much of our food, in soil, including vegetables, fruit, wheat, and rice. So the permeability of soils affects which plants will grow and how well they grow in particular soils. Okay, so we have to sort of really think about those soil types before we decide what types of food we are planting there and how we're using that soil. So remember, impermeable does not mean that no water will flow through, just very little and very slowly. Okay, so the permeability of soils is rated as, so it gets a rating of how permeable it is. So rapid, so that means water flows through very quickly, and so that means it's permeable. If it's moderate, so that means the water flows through slowly, then it's semi-permeable. If it's slow, so that means very little water flows through even after a long period of time. So you're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, then we would say that's impermeable. Okay, so it's three different ratings that we have: permeable, semi-permeable, and impermeable. So careful observations. So we're going to be looking at an investigation now. Now, the investigation that we're going to look at together is going to be one that is done online for us. So we're going to watch what happens and think about the different stages in the process as we watch it. But it might also be something that you might like to recreate at home as well, if you're able to. Okay, so when we're looking, and it's talking here about careful observations, there could be two ways in which you can do this. We can be making careful observations as we're watching the video that we're going to look at, and you could be looking at making careful observations for the investigation that you set up. So let's remind ourselves of what we mean by careful observations. So seeing, looking, and glancing are not the same as observing. That's a very different thing altogether, observing. So scientists have to train themselves to observe carefully, to know and to understand what they are observing. Okay, so they're really focusing in on what they are looking for. So observation checklist, so things to remember. Focus your attention to what you are trying to find out in your investigation. Okay, so in this case, we are focusing on the permeability of the soil. That's the one thing that we're focusing on, all right, with this soil. We're not thinking necessarily about the colour of the soil or anything else to do with it or how fine or anything like that. We are just thinking about the permeability of the soil. That's what we're concentrating on. Make sure you have a clear view of what you are observing, so you put yourself in a really good position to be able to see and watch what's going on, and avoid taking your attention away, as you may miss something important happening. And this would mean that what you think has happened and what actually happened is different. So it's always keeping your eye on the ball and always looking and watching, okay, not being distracted by something that's going on over there, okay, because you might miss something really important. So we are going to have a look at this soil investigation now. So think about those observations. So somebody is going to be making the observations for us during this video, but you need to be watching as well so that you can see if you agree with the observations that are being made. And did you spot it before we are explained to about it on the video? Okay, so I'm going to play the video to you now. So let me just find that again on here. Okay, so I've just found it again. I had lost it for a moment there, so I just paused the recording, but we should have it there now for us to see. So let's have a look at this science investigation and see what we can observe as we are watching.
Soil draining experiment. Working scientifically. Our aim is to carry out an experiment to investigate which type of soil water drains through the quickest. Have a think about the different types of soil you know. Which do you think will drain the quickest? Soil draining experiment method. You will need a measuring cylinder, a filter funnel, filter paper, and different types of soil. Place your filter in the measuring cylinder. Then fold your filter paper and place it inside the filter funnel. Let's take a look inside. You're going to need 4 different measuring cylinders for 4 different types of soil. We're going to add different types of soil to each one and see how easy it is to filter water through them. To make this a fair test, what are we going to need to keep the same? Have a think. We're going to need the same volume of soil and the same volume of water. So the same amount of soil and the same amount of water in each one. These are our control variables, the things we keep the same to make the experiment a fair test. Add different types of soil to the filter, making sure you fill it to the same height each time. We're going to be investigating sand, clay, chalk, and peat. As you're filling it up, make sure you don't fill it all the way up to the top, because we'll need space to put in the water. Next, use a measuring cylinder to measure out 50 millilitres of water for each filter funnel. And then leave your experiment for 15 minutes. Out of sand, clay, chalk and peat, which do you think will drain the quickest? Results. When you come back, your experiment should look something like this. Different amounts of water will have drained through the different soils. Measure the volume of water that filtered through each soil type by reading off your measuring cylinder. And fill it into a table, like this. We have type of soil in the left-hand column and volume of water drained in millilitres in the right-hand column. Looking at the results, what conclusions can you draw from the experiment? The most water drained through the sand, 45 millilitres, then the chalk, 32 millilitres, and then the peat, 18 millilitres. The least water drained through the clay soil, only 5 millilitres of water. You could draw a bar chart to represent this information. We would put types of soil along the bottom and volume of water drained in millilitres along the y-axis, the side axis. Make sure you draw a scale that's even, so we've gone up in 5s, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, etc. Make sure you leave a gap between your bars and draw them on with a pencil and a ruler. Summary. We've carried out an experiment to investigate which type of soil water drains through the quickest, and we found that sandy soil drained the quickest and clay drains the slowest.
If you enjoyed this video,
Okay, so let's just come out of that now. So an investigation there that was carried out into how quickly the water was able to drain through the different types of soil. Now they used 4 different types of soil in that investigation there, and they found out that sand drained the water through the quickest and the most amount, and the clay was the least. So that would tell us that the sandy soil was the permeable soil, that it allowed the water to drain through, and the clay soil was the impermeable soil. Now, although it did let a little bit through, that it was a very small amount over that amount of time. Okay, remember we had those 3 different stages, didn't we, of types of permeability. So we had permeable, semi-permeable and impermeable. Okay, so if we were thinking about that vocabulary there with that investigation, that is how we would grade it in those different ways there. So that investigation there was carried out, and you could see step by step how they went through that different process there. And I really liked how they broke it down and getting to think about those questions, because that's always really important to do when we do an investigation, that we have to set it up and we have to make sure that we're setting it up in a fair way. And then we have to watch and observe and get our results. And then we have to try and think about how we present those results. And we saw how we did a bar graph there, which fits in beautifully with your work you did last week in maths, and then also what those results actually tell us, because we draw a conclusion and it tells us some information. So just by watching that video today, that has really hopefully taught you and reminded you of those different step-by-step process of how we carry through an investigation. It's giving you an idea as well about the types of soil and the difference there is in the permeability, and how that can affect how we use them for certain crops that we might grow or activities that we might do. So if you want to and you're able to, you could have a go at doing your own similar investigation. It hasn't got to be exactly like that there, but you can adapt it to do what you are able to do at home if you can. So you might maybe in your garden go and get a little soil sample, and sometimes we can have different types of soil in the front garden, the back garden, or maybe if you're out and about on a walk somewhere, you can maybe get a soil sample from there and see if it looks a little bit different to the soil you've got in your garden. So you might only get 2 different soil samples, okay, of different types of soil, and you might not know what types of soil they are. That's fine, because we could test it out to see if we could maybe work out what type of soil it is. Okay, we don't need to have measuring cylinders that look exactly like what we saw on the investigation there, the tall thin ones. We tend to have those in school, don't we? We don't have to have those. You've got measuring cylinders at home that you might use for baking or whatever else you want to use your measuring cylinders for in the kitchen. So you might have some measuring cylinders there. The filter paper, that's really, parents might have a coffee machine, that's a coffee filter paper. So that can be used for your filter paper for putting your soil in before you add the water. Okay, so you can adapt it at home if you're able to, but please don't worry if you're not able to, because you've seen the video already. But if you can have a go at doing it, do it in the way that they did it on that investigation. Do it step by step, set it up, 15 minutes, making sure you've got the same amount of water, the same amount of soil that you're using in each one. Look up your results. You might even want to put your results into a table. There is a sheet in the folder today for you to record your results on if you want to. And if you're feeling really adventurous today, then you might want to have a go at showing those results into a bar chart as well. Okay, so that could really then practice all those different skills that we've looked at, not just in science, but in maths as well. So hopefully you enjoyed watching that video and thinking about those different types of soil and how we use them. I hope whatever you do with what you found out from this video today, you enjoy doing and recreating. If you are able to do the investigation, then let us know how you got on and what you found out, and whether you managed to find out and make a prediction about what sort of soil it actually was that you did find. Okay, dependent upon how it compared with that investigation that we saw there. So have a good day. Enjoy what you are doing with your science. I hope you've enjoyed this topic of rocks and soils. We've got a new topic in science to start when we come back after half term, which we will obviously explain to you when we get back. So have a good day. I will see you all very soon. Bye.